don't focus on the career, the job title. Focus on the competencies and what you love. Self-assess constantly. What are your strengths and where are your opportunities to develop? Because I think if you do that, the career paths will come.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Built by Humans. Today, we have an awesome guest, Carrie Lazorchak, Chief Revenue Officer of SimilarWeb. And it was a fantastic conversation for a number of reasons. I think we really, Andrei, I felt like we just touched upon so many topics that are really in the zeitgeist of what leaders are thinking about.
Absolutely. I mean, she touched a bit on diversity, how that's really important within our organization. We moved into, how there's a new generation of leaders coming in with millennials growing into their jobs and careers, and a lot about work-life balance in the remote world. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of topics that Carrie didn't touch.
Yeah, and I think more than anything, as a current leader, like having self-awareness that these are the realities that you are now in, which by the way, might be different than the ones that you had, even a year ago, pre, this kind of major shift in the way people work is so important. And so this is a fantastic conversation. I left energized. Carrie's an amazing leader, and I'm excited that we all have the opportunity to learn from her. So let's tune in and hear from Carrie Lazorchak. Hey, Carrie, how you doing?
I'm great. It's nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here, and we're going to kind of kick this off with a little self-reflection. If you could send a one-sentence text to yourself 15 years ago, what would it say?
It would say, relax more. Nothing's that important. It's funny because, I think, there's a lot of pressure in the role that I represent in the business, which is go-to-market, right? It's very quantitative. We have a lot of numbers. It's very time-based driven results. And I find just stepping back and saying I'm my sister saves lives. She's in the medical business. Her job is making sure people don't die. Nothing that I do and fail at is going to do that. So in retrospect, I would just say to myself, keep it all in perspective, and use the failures as an opportunity to learn versus stressing about getting it 100% right all the time.
You're so right. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be fun. No thing is certain. No outcome is certain, right? It's all about the journey, and every day should be a party. It should be fun. And I think a lot of times we just get super mired in the hamster wheel of achieving and success and pressure and results, and we miss the point. And so
it's hard when you're younger to realize that's definitely something that comes with experience. So by the way, in hindsight, everything looks easier, I think. So, yeah.
That resonates immensely. The other thing my co-founder Dan talks a lot about, which I think is a really powerful reminder of ourselves, is most things are reversible. There's very few existential decisions that you can't go back and change. And so these big things that we grapple with, even a hire or a decision doesn't work out, you just change it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think in business that's true. Obviously, there are other jobs in the work. There are other jobs in the fields. Like I said, healthcare workers, police officers, professions where the decisions they make, military, it does matter, of course. But in the general business perspective, yes, I think you're 100% right.
With this kind of mindset around work-life balance, I think one of the things that a lot of us there's a lot of changes happening right now in the world. Companies are working remote, people are onboarding remote, and the people that are leading functions are cut from a different cloth as the kind of millennial starts to be just the new people that are being led and the new people that are leading. And I think that has implications for how people think about empowering their workforce, the type of work experience people want. And I know that this is something that you've thought a lot about. And so I'd love to get your opinion. I mean, how has the leadership of the new generation workforce changed in the past couple of years?
Well, let me break that down into two parts, because I think there's two different questions there. One question is the dynamics of the remote workforce, right? Regardless of age, whatever, I don't think that's really the material impact. The second part is managing the new generation of professionals, right? The millennials, the Gen Zs, et cetera. So maybe I can talk about that in slightly two different ways, because first of all, I've been a work from home remote worker for 25 years. And it was more indicative of sales organizations, I think, in companies to have a lot of more resources that were close to clients versus close to the G&A functions of the business, or et cetera. So outside of teams like inside sales or entry-level roles, it was more common. So I've been a work from home person. I mean, at my current job, for 2 years, I was the only executive not in Israel. So I was also, by the way, we hired a chief marketing officer this year, who the only executive he met in the company was me, because he's in the US. So there's a lot of new dynamics that come along with all that. What I would say about that, and there's pros and cons. Like in some ways, once you get in the rhythm of it, you can find better work-life balance. Okay. On the other side, in the beginning, I think you find like you work way more than you did when you had a clear like beginning and end of your day going into the office. So you just have to find, it really requires you to up-level your communication skills. It really requires you to have more structure, like conscious thinking around like the start and end of your day. Personally, I found a lot of little tricks, like have the space that you're going to work. Be clear that is like your workspace and it doesn't like blend into the rest of your environment all day long. For 20 years, I had like this credenza that literally had a cabinet you open and you close. So I opened it when I'm going to start my day. And when I'm like, was consciously saying I'm done, I just shut it. And I said on a Saturday, on a Sunday, if that's not a work day, I'm not even going to open the cabinet. Or if I do, it's not to do any work, basically. So you find the little tips and tricks. I think that people over time will, as they are adjusting to it, will find that they actually get more time with family. They actually get more time for they're set themselves, because they're not driving anymore. They don't have traffic time. They don't have but it does take a little time, and it does require a lot more conscious management. I think the hardest job is actually the management role, right? Onboarding new people, building relationships, building trust. As managers, it takes a lot more conscious planning to actually do it well than when you're just in an office and you can go around and see your workforce and observe how people are struggling or doing well. So where we've really had to double down at Similarweb is management training, management tools, a lot more proactive cadences to bring people together. So I think all those things, like we said earlier, there will be benefits that come from all that. I don't think post-COVID, whatever we define that as, I do think people will come to more hybrid structures than one or the other, because I also do see, and this goes a little more to our second topic of the millennial Gen Z population, social engagement, personal social engagement matters to the satisfaction of individuals in their job. Okay. And I find that, when you're young, part of your work life is your social life, right? It is where you meet people. It is where you engage. A lot of people
totally
build relationships there. And that is hard to do purely over Zoom or purely. So I do think companies will have an ongoing obligation to create an environment to support those needs in the workforce. But in a much more flexible way. We've made a conscious, by the way, Similarweb was a company that very much believed in the office environment, office atmosphere. We really tried to hire people to come into the office every day pre-COVID. I was one of the few people that was remote, honestly. today we definitely see the value of a more hybrid structure and giving people more flexibility to have that balance of not having all that social engagement all the time. And I think that will be more the norm, quite frankly.
100%. Carrie, I think you're hitting on a couple of great points. Specifically, like I find that in a remote space, when you're working remote for a long time, your manager kind of becomes like a face on a screen, right? And more specifically, when you're planning, it's almost as if you're in a meeting, it has to be that you're getting something done, yeah. Right? You're discussing a next step. You're planning something out, and the meetings that actually get cut out are the ones around like career development, feedback, tough conversations, because suddenly you cannot really, it just becomes more touchy to kind of bring that subject up and say, hey, this, angered me, or this made it difficult for me to concentrate. Let's discuss this. And so being someone that has been doing this for a while, two questions. One, were the people that were reporting to you also in the US, or was everyone in Israel? And second, what type of structures did you put in place to facilitate those types of conversations?
Yeah. So first of all, just as a little backdrop on Similarweb, my organization is a global organization. So today I have about 270 people globally. We have offices in 9 different countries today. So my direct reports are actually, I have a direct report in Tokyo. I have one in London. I have a couple in Israel. I have one in North America. My direct management team, all global. The other executives are mostly in Israel, except for the chief marketing officer that we just hired in the US. So he and I are the 2 executives sitting in outside of Israel. The rest of the executive team, CFO, CEO, chief people, product is all in Israel. R&D, chief technology officer. Again, like the big thing, first of all, communication transparency become far more important. And having some consistency of that. And as you said, like making sure that those touch points are we have to blend like those sessions that are business and very productive business, and then also create a format for collaboration. So for example, I went from having quarterly all hands meetings where I would get up and give full transparency about what's happening in the business, key projects and initiatives, just reward and recognition of people, to bi-monthly sessions, much more frequent, right? Type of collaboration. We also started, interestingly, consciously putting in more non-business meetings. So like we have weekly happy hours, which are like trivia, bingo, like just social interaction types of activities that we have guest speakers that come on from related to all different types of topics that have nothing to do with like the day-to-day business. We also went, I think what company was also learn is we also went to very high production events. So not just like this Zoom, everybody's on a Zoom background. Like we just completed our sales kickoff meeting in January, and we put as much money into that as when we flew everybody to Israel, basically.
Wow.
Production, green screen, live streaming, to make it, DJ, like the whole deal, to make it really fun for people. And the nice thing was like people could bring their, we had an awards event. They could bring their kids, their spouses, their significant others. Everybody could share in the event, which by the way, I couldn't do when I was flying everybody to Israel and everybody was sitting in a room. So there were a lot of pros that came out of that. It's been interesting.
That's such a good idea. I always think about just the idea of like, it's not a party if you do it every day. And if you're on Zoom every day and then you have the SKO and it feels like you're on a Zoom again with nothing special, then people are going to tune out. They're going to become desensitized and they're going to be less engaged. And so, yeah, if you want people to get the same amount of value out of it as if you had it at a fancy hotel where everybody flew in from around the world, you kind of have to invest in it like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one of the things I know that I had also heard that you have done personally is kind of an internal content series. And I'd love to hear more about that, because I think one of the themes that I just see from most leaders is that internal marketing is becoming as important as external marketing. And because guess what? The number one touch point for your market is going to be the people at your company. And so, yeah, I'd be curious if you guys are kind of doing any type of internal series, communications, video, audio, whatever it is, to just kind of make sure the right message is getting to the people that you have on the front lines.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for sure, we do a lot of what we classify kind of like as all hands, right? We do them at team levels, regional levels, department levels, all the way up to the executive, like the CEO presents consistently to the team. Just more about like the vision and what's going on at the strategic level. We have a whole set of specific initiatives that we try to enroll the whole company to motivate the whole company around. What I am finding today is, it's a generation that has this, they're highly adaptive, which is a very big positive. At the same time, it's a workforce that wants they want constant change. They want to have, try a lot of different things, be exposed to a lot of things. They have a lot of desires for fast career change, right?
Yep.
And clarity for career change. So what I find I have to spend as a company, we have to spend more time than I feel we did in the last 10 years is on career pathing, career planning, personal development for people. So when you think about like your question on content, a lot of what we try to do is expose the team to topics that relate to those things, right? So for example, there's an organization called WISE. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, Women in Sales, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I support that organization. They recently put out they're doing an event coming up on, it's really about like, it's for women in business. And it's all about like, how do you control your career? How do you invest in your career pathing and promotions and develop, which was an amazing platform. So promoting those kinds of other events as content for our team to hear out, even outside of our company, like things they can do to really personally invest in that. And then being conscious that it's something we have to do way more than I think people were doing in the past. And also just building a platform to allow people to change. Like I have an expectation that pretty much every 18 to 24 months, people are going to change jobs. They're going to either career path within their domain. They're going to career path outside of their domain. So we think very differently about when we hire people. We're hiring them for competency more than for direct applicable skills, by the way. So for example, I have people that are lawyers and now do sales at Similarweb. Okay. They came in as law degrees, studied law, decided they loved engaging with clients, negotiating like sales competencies, and they become amazing salespeople. So like all of those are changes, like I would say in the last, 5 years and it's become more and more relevant. For me, it's the benefits are the generation is super smart. They can adapt technology so fast. And for a company that like ours, that's is growing 40% a year, it's those skills bode really, really well for our growth. So we just need to lean into the things they need to get out of it, the things that they bring value to our business.
Hey, Andrei from Troops here. Are you using Slack or Microsoft Teams at your organization? If you are, then you have to be delivering the right information to the right people at the right time from your CRM, marketing automation, support, sales engagement, and customer success systems in an actionable way with Troops.ai. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to what our customers are saying about their experience using Troops.
I highly recommend Troops. I think that it has transformed our business. And I think especially with just where businesses are going nowadays, like even outside of COVID, remote work is becoming so, important and so much more common. So I think it just brings in that feeling that you get when you step onto a sales floor and you feel that energy and excitement. You're bringing that into Slack and you're making it this digital area of excitement.
One thing that I think about, though, is the concept of mastery, right? And I'm smiling at Andrei right now. When I think about a lot of young people, they want to go on to the next thing. They want to go on to the next thing. And that's very, very stimulating. And you can achieve a lot of growth there. But reflecting on concepts like the 10,000 hour rule or whatever it is, like you need to put in the time to become world class at your craft. And I think that is lost on a lot of young people.
Yeah. When I first came into SimilarWeb a couple of years ago, I think it's really important that people understand career development does not mean changing jobs necessarily. Okay. You can become the best in the discipline that you love doing, right? Like to your earlier point, like you got to have fun. You got to love what it is that you're doing, and forcing yourself to just like go do something else for the sake of thinking that's like the thing you have to do. It's a really important conscious awareness factor. What we've done in our company is try to create like a leveling model within disciplines that mirrors the model of like managements, right? So it's like, for example, we instituted this year principal functions in our disciplines, which we hadn't really had before, right? It's a role that says like in this discipline, like you're the best of the best. And the compensation is more commensurate to somebody who's managing teams of people, by the way, even though it's an individual contributor job, right? So I think it's a really good point. I think in my business, the other thing is your value being an expert at something is much higher. I give this example to my team. I say, if your pipes break in your kitchen, do you call a plumber or the general contractor? Right? Like your competence in fixing that problem, which is critical to like a lot of other issues that could happen in your household, is to call the expert, to call the plumber. If you think about like, if I'm hiring somebody, I'm going to put more value on somebody that has demonstrated expertise in a specific domain than a generalist that's done lots of different things.
1,000%. I just want to say one thing here because you just touched on plumber, and I had the funniest thing happen to me yesterday. We had a plumber come to our house, and he walks in, and I was like, "How's your day going?" He goes, "Shitty, but I'm a plumber, so what are you going to do?" And I died. And, but then I thought about it and I was like, he mastered that joke.
I was going to say, how many times has he said that joke?
Right.
Yeah. But what you're touching on is I'm obsessed with this topic because for me personally, I have jumped, from sales to marketing, and now I'm trying to go into more of a growth and product-led kind of motion. They're running the free trial here at Troops. And I think a big reason why younger people, at least in my generation, are seeking these experiences is because a lot of us just don't really know where we want to master, right? And on top of that, I think that when you put yourself in a place where you're thinking in different ways, at least early in your career, you commonly are able to come back into maybe an initial role that you pushed away from with a more rounded perspective and a more full perspective. And you're kind of seeing this in revenue teams, right, where sales ops, marketing ops, they all want to CS ops. They all want to be revenue ops professionals now. So really having that full scope can be incredibly valuable. And the last thing I want to say, when you were talking about how people that are younger have a higher, I guess, technical aptitude and stuff, I am blown away by like the kids that are 8 years old right now and watching them play with their iPads. Like they are using an iPad and a computer at a level so sophisticated that I can't even imagine, what type of generalists we're going to see that are going to be basically as effective as specialists in many roles, but with that, really cool full perspective as well.
One advice I give young people, all the time, including my children. Okay. Like I have children in the millennial generation. Okay. I have, I got kids from 24 years old to 12. Okay. So, one recommendation I give is like, don't focus on the career, the job title. Focus on the competencies and what you love, right? Like, you self-assess constantly. What are your strengths and where are your opportunities to develop? Because I think if you do that, you'll find more pleasure in what you're doing, and B, you'll just naturally find the career paths will come. I think companies have an obligation to spend the time and invest in what are the competencies around different roles and the transparency and clarity of that. Because I just find the career pathing then becomes very clear for people. I'm also a big fan. In a company that I worked for before, we had one of the executives was big on something he called side projects, which I think is a great, great concept. It's the concept where you create a platform for people to try other things without having to fully commit to the change, right? So if somebody in my team says, I really want to build more competency around business economics, okay, and understand, like we're sales, marketing, whatever, then I might create a side project in partnership with someone in finance that exposes them to business economics. So, without them having to change jobs and go be in finance, for example. So I think there's also like huge opportunity for companies to do that, to develop the talent you're talking about, but allow people to still stay in a job that they love without having to change jobs.
I think a big reason people leave jobs, there's this kind of continuum of engagement for your workers. And when people are learning a new job and they feel like they're learning new skills, et cetera, they feel like they're growing and they're excited and they want to stay. And then eventually they become very proficient, and all of a sudden that job is less exciting. It's less interesting. And the reality is sometimes you just need someone to do that task. Like that is what the business needs. And so like, I'm just thinking about a customer support rep. Are you really evolving that much after you've been in that role for 9 months in terms of new skills, new ideas? Maybe, maybe not. But giving people some type of creative outlet to feel growth intentionally while that job to be done is being executed as it needs to be with obvious career pathing beyond that, I think is a very, very effective thing for companies to do and invest in for exactly why you just described.
Yeah, 100%. The other piece of advice I would just give, an observation, is like one of the number one competencies that is work early in your career is self-awareness. Okay. People will feel they are proficient and they're an expert in their domain, but when they when you get external feedback on the perception of other people of you, it can be completely different, right? So, one piece of advice is seek external feedback, right, and constantly strive for improvement of your self-awareness through external inputs, because your own impression of yourself is never the full impression of how other people see you. It doesn't matter whether you're young or even for me, that 35 years of professional experience. Like it's something that is worth the time and effort, because I just think that's where people find job dissatisfaction, because they perceive they've achieved all that they can achieve, and their skill set and competencies are all where they should be. And they don't take the time to actually get external input to that.
How do you systematically make that easy? And the reason I ask is because there's going to be a small subset of people that do these extra things to grow themselves. And then there's going to be a lot of people that frankly, either because of lack of confidence, lack of awareness, lack of understanding, are not going to proactively. I mean, I think that's most humans just perpetually live out of fear. And so the idea of going and proactively seeking feedback that could be potentially negative or detrimental is highly unlikely for a lot of the population of the workforce. And so that's why, to me, it's like, how do we make it easy for people to do that? Do you, or have you in the past done anything systematically that makes it easy for people to have that type of external feedback outside of perhaps just their direct manager, or I know there's ways companies do this.
Yeah. So first of all, I think a lot of companies strive to create platforms for this. I think at SimilarWeb, the HR team and SimilarWeb has actually done an amazing job in this area. I mean, the first thing is we've sat down and defined these competencies, right? So, and we train, the key is the managers have to invest in it, and B, the individuals have to invest. Like it's a, you know what, it goes both ways, but we create tactically multiple platforms within the year for the conversation to happen. So like we have something we call feedback talk. If feedback talk happens twice a year, it's a formal process. And in that process, aside from, there's a section that's just like, how are you doing on performance, right? Highlights and lowlights, because every single job in our business is measurable, has some type of KPI, right? But then there's we have a section that's dedicated to behavioral traits, personal competencies, and it just forces a dialogue. Like it creates a platform to say, the individual has to say the two things that they think that today at this point in time are their strengths, and today at this point in time are their opportunities for development, whether they apply directly to their current job or not, right? So, some of it's education, some of it is just creating platforms for those conversations. Some of it is the training that needs to go into both sides, like how coaching individuals on how to have that conversation, but coaching managers to create an environment that's comfortable for those conversations. And it like I said, it takes proactive, conscious thinking to go do it.
Yeah, I love that. I literally was just thinking on this call as you were talking, like perhaps the number one thing people can do for career development is find their bliss. Because you find your bliss, everything else will come, right? Like it's an inputs way of thinking compared to an outcomes way of thinking where, and it sounds like that's what you've told your children, right? Is like there's a great book. I don't know if you read it, called The Score Will Take Care of Itself. Mm-hmm. And, it's just one of these leadership novels. And basically the idea is you do all the right inputs, all the right little things, like the outcome that you want will materialize.
Absolutely. I don't know that it's all bliss, by the way. It's not easy. It's not easy. And it won't always be comfortable. So I don't know. Bliss is the concept where ultimately that's you're striving.
Totally fair. I think it's almost more like, instead of bliss, the essence of what I'm trying to capture is that thing that you're insatiably excited and curious about and you want to master. And that is the key. Find that thing, go build a business around it, go build a career around it, go build an expertise around it. But that's what gets you up in the morning and helps you kind of overcome those obstacles and things that make it hard, like you just alluded to.
And I think what we're talking about actually weaves in really nicely to two conversations that, me and you had recently, Scott, where it was, we spoke to the CEO of John Gerard, and he was talking about how it's literally almost impossible to be on the other side of your own communication. And like you mentioned, Carrie, that communication style is so important to fine tune today with this new remote environment. And the second comment that I think this relates to really well is the CEO of Frame, Emery Wells. He's talking about how if you want to be excellent, you need to align everyone around a shared vision of what excellent looks like. And that means having that vision be so clear across all functional groups that giving feedback, right? Engineering giving feedback to marketing or vice versa is like built in, and it's automatic because people are all on the same page. And so, some of that is cultural and needs to be constantly reinforced. But on the other side, some of it is individual, right? And I'm not saying that I do this, but I think it'd be really cool to go ahead and find a sales rep, a marketer, an engineer, a product person that, is kind of like my board of directors of feedback, where I have a new blog post or a new podcast, like, wait, what do you think about this? And that's on you, right? And as an individual, I think that would be really, really beneficial. But I want to move on to the lightning round here, Carrie. This is the part where we dig a little bit more into you and, just learn about some of the things you're passionate about. So the first question here is, what is one skill and I'm going to switch this one up a little bit, that you'd like to make sure to pass on to your soon coming grandchildren?
Self-confidence is probably the number one, I would say, which is, I had a woman that worked for me 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago. And when my kids were young and her kids were older, and she had these amazing kids. And I went to her and I said, like, how do you land in this place where your kids are so amazing? And her feedback to me was, the number one thing you can do is help your kids build self-confidence. And I actually found that was very applicable both for my kids and for my employees. Create platforms for them to learn, take risks, empower them to make mistakes, like all those, and reinforce recognition, rewards, all those things. That's probably what I would say.
That's a great one. So this is the first time that I'm going to ask this one. What is a business problem that you currently face that if presented with a good solution, you'd be comfortable buying immediately?
Reward and recognition is actually an area where we struggle to excel at that. Okay. No matter how much the company can do, somewhere we're missing the mark and I think the mark is more on expectations. So I don't know if there's somebody that has a really, because I think it's a very, very important part of our employee satisfaction, right, and retention in the business. And for me, stability and retention drives outcome performance and sales and go to market. If somebody can solve for has a solution for how to really do reward and recognition of your employees in a high performing way, a high satisfaction way, I would love to see that.
Yeah, especially right now. I feel like that's so important. I think this segues well into this next one. What is your 10X project right now, Carrie? What are you most excited about and why?
Well, I actually have specifically a project called 10 Times Project Initiative that I own in the executive team. And this is about client growth. We have a big initiative to increase the number of companies that we provide our annual subscription product to 10 times what it is today. So today, about 2,500 companies. And I need to do 10 times that over the next few years. So it's very high growth. There's a lot we could spend hours talking about how we're going to get there, by the way. But it's a big initiative for me. It's the one that I own in the business today.
I love that. And here's my last one for you here. You spoke about whys and your involvement and the emphasis that you place on diversity. What is one piece of advice that you would like to give, young female managers, first-time employees that you wish you heard?
First of all, I think my message would be to managers, and the message would be embrace a team of a lot of differences, right? And diversity to me is a lot of different levels, right? It's everything from experience diversity, educational diversity, cultural diversity. There's so many different ways that you can define diversity, but I find teams of people with lots of different backgrounds in any of those domains drives better outcomes. But I also find that human nature, especially for managers, is a comfort zone. People tend to hire people with the same profile, general, like I said, on many, many different levels, because it's just comfortable. Yeah. So just get out of your comfort zone, hire those people that maybe make you the least comfortable, quite frankly, because it will create challenge in your environment. And I think and by the way, it's why I really embrace personally and love as part of my job having a global role, because one of the opportunities you get in a global role is a lot of cultural diversity, right? And that breeds amazing learnings, amazing outcomes.
I love that. I think a lot about, I don't know if you've read Ray Dalio's work at all. He has a book called Principles, and it's kind of how he built his hedge fund Bridgewater. But one of the things he talks about is going as far as to intentionally put people around you with disparate thought.
Absolutely.
Because that is how you arrive at the best outcomes. And I think it's such a powerful thing to be cognizant of. But Carrie, we got to wrap this one up. We are so grateful for you coming on. This was awesome. I'm energized as hell right now. I feel like I just had an espresso shot.
Awesome. It's still early here, so I am just finishing my coffee, but it was great to spend time with you. I really am excited about your platform and what you guys are doing with the program. So, congratulations on that. It seems to be, doing a lot of positive things. So it's great.
Thanks.
You and I appreciate the opportunity.
We may have to bring it back at some time. But thank you everybody for listening. This was excellent. Definitely follow Carrie. Carrie, you on LinkedIn? Is that the best place for people to?
But I will tell you, one of my own personal career areas of investment is I'm not the best social person, which is, I think, indicative of my age. So I was just referenced to a really good book called Fanatical Prospecting.
Oh, I've read that. Jeb Blount.
So I'm
all over it.
I'm jumping into that, but yes, please follow me, and hopefully I'll prove that I get better over time in my social marketing.
Nice. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. Hey, if you liked the episode, share it on social. Why not? Well, we will see everybody later. And thanks again. Have a great day.